I want to use that to force change of course, because the current course is disastrous for everybody.
Well, the boomerang came back in Oromia already when the region went back from protest the street against the state to a militarized conflict in western Oromia, in Wallagga, which has now morphed into a very formidable rebel movement, armed resistance against the state. I think what I wanted to do with this is to, in the book, part of it you discuss about the efforts that you did to bring peace in Oromia and to bring also other conflicts that the Oromia-Somali regional state border conflicts that were really devouring the communities of Boz. And then you also mention about the efforts in the book in Harari and the Oromo community in the Harari at that time. But I'm interested at the Oromia conflict because that is now what has morphed into this a formidable resistance against the state and the government trying to tell itself and tell the world that it could be co-opted through the same process that we have seen now with Jalsani versus Shimelis, the president of Oromia region. You, in this process, as part of this, you had a roadmap. You talk about that.
Yeah.
Although we were reporting about the efforts of disarming the Oromo Liberation Army combatants, which was partially successful, but then it was again kiboshed, I think. You had a roadmap in that. You said you produced, after that tour, you produced 27 pages of roadmap on demobilization, disarmament, and other political disagreements and all this. How did we fail? I know in the book you try to assign blame on both sides. Also, I think the government takes much of the blame for its failure. Did we learn anything now, 6 years after that?
Some have learned, some might not. You see, I don't want to say the regime. Abiy has a totally different dream than
we'll get back
pretty much anybody in the political scene, right? So while we are trying that, there is this, they learned the wrong lesson from their parent organization, the TPLF, i.e. their godfather Mallas, which was he always wanted to have low-level insurgency as a way of justifying crackdown on opposition, and it worked. Low-level insurgency in Somali region, low-level insurgency in Oromia was vital for consolidation of TPLF's power in the 1990s and early 2000s. These guys who were young at that point, I think from their childhood, this was inculcated in their brain. Because I remember conversation in Palace about, I used to, in November I wrote about DDR, I think 2018, I don't know, was I in Ethiopia or was I when I wrote for Addis Standard about the importance of proper DDR.
You critical when they were back to the conflict, you wrote, I remember, you wrote an article asking what is the deal that was signed in Asmara? What are the details of the peace agreement that were signed? And it's a deja vu now. We don't know the details of the peace agreement signed between the Oromia regional government and Jalsani faction, that breakaway faction that I have it in good authority was also already dealing with the government since a year and a half. And so we're back to the same, it's like a hamster on...
The reason we are back to it is because the origin of the idea is very important. The way they perceived the OLF and now the FANOS is the way the PRDF, older PRDF perceived insurgency during that time. What they misunderstood is, one, they are not Mallas and they don't have PRDF, a robust political organization. And Ethiopia and the world has transformed. The state is much more fragile and weak. The population are highly agitated. There is heightened nationalism across the country. And they didn't understand. So when, in a palace, that conversation when I was agitating from early on, pushing the OLF and others and calling the military guys. And one day, and I was asked, why are you so obsessed with bringing OLF home? It's a good thing that they remain in the bush. Even the TPLF used them as an excuse. He said, Oromos are addicted to rebelling. So, since they will always oppose, we need justification to crack down on them. It's good to have them there. That is very important because it tells you the mindset that's still there. There is an assumption. They really thought that Monroe would remain in Gidami Sudan border. They never in their wildest dream. So, I don't know if I'll put it in a book. After agitating after them like this, the day I was going to Ambo, we stopped at Kinji.
That's the first place where the protests started.
And there were people protesting against me. And I was like, okay, remember that's when everybody was like, those people. Everybody was chanting my name, but a small group of people were.
Why was that?
They had Dawood Ibsa's shirt. They have Wabo written on it. I wanted to know. So I said, bring those people. They're like, no, they are. No, bring them. So I spent about 10 minutes interrogating. OLA was already in Ginji. This is August 6, 2018. I noted this. I came home and told one of the government people. They didn't care. I think 2-3 months later, there is actually a movement around Ginji where Sanyi and others started this stuff. Yeah, so I think they really underestimated the situation in Oromia and the situation in Amhara because they are operating in the old EPRD mentality and they did not appreciate the socio-economic transformation domestically and internationally.
I would say another point of inflection for this massive expansion of the Oromo Liberation Army movement in Ethiopia as an insurrection, as a insurgent group, is the assassination of Hachalu Hundessa. At some point you discuss about that in your book. My belief is that there is a pre and post Hachalu Hundessa politics in Ethiopia that defines the relationship of the Oromo with the Ethiopian state. I believe that. Whatever happened after the assassination of Hachalu had 360 turnaround into the dynamics that's happening. I think that part they underestimated as to how it was going to drive the youth to go and join the Oromo Liberation Army, to have lost hope in the government once Hachalu was assassinated. You discuss about that. But I want you to reflect on how you framed the assassination of Hachalu in your book, in which you said it was a collective shock for the Oromo, undeniable. And I say Oromo politics is never the same again. I stand by that. You can contradict that. But you also mentioned how it created the fragmentation of Oromo elite, right? And I think that's a point that needs to be interrogated. Because where we are today is absolutely a fragmented elite in terms of even analyzing the politics itself. In your belief, was that the starting point? Was the assassination of Hachalu the starting point, or was it something that was cooking in the back?
In the book I opened that chapter about Hachalu by discussing the killing of the Duke, Ferdinand. But that was the spark, right? At the match. But the room was filled with gas. Europe prior to that was evolving. There is political tension building. There is competition. It's already ripe to explode, and the killing just blew the lid off. For about a year, more than a year, the politics in Ethiopia was getting more and more intense by day. The tension with Tigray was going up. In Oromia, our efforts have failed. Tension was going. We're trying to keep the lead on, but it was evolving. Remember, it's a couple of months before that I joined a political party. We did that campaign, so the tension was building. Now, Abiy has taken side with, Ethiopian
reactionary forces, the right, I think.
he has taken with the right. He has drifted far to the right with the promise of restoring the glorious empire and cracking down on ethno-nationalists and so forth. So the polarization was already there, and the killing of an iconic figure just blew the lid off. And since this single was, the icon, he was the personification of the Gero. It was the personification of where Oromo was. When you look at him on that stage, I recently met someone, an Eritrean, and said he watched him in the Millennium, and I didn't understand a single word he was saying, but I understood everything he was saying. When you see him on the stage, that guy represented what Oromo was at that point. This triumphalism, this energy, but also this warning, right? And I think, he embodied Oromo. He was like Oromo's put into a person. When that person was eliminated, I think the whole thing shattered. I can't speak for myself and others. Since then, conversation with elite within the government has been extremely difficult. Me being from the East and socially liberal, I try. But others, I think they have extreme difficulty. And because it was the collective trauma, if you saw the days after the killing, and even after that, I went abroad after prison. These two little kids, probably like 5 and 6, and came to me and said, "We have a question." On stage. I'm like, "Are they going to ask me for candy?" Said, "Who killed Hachalu?" Isn't that the number one question now Oromos have? Yeah. So I think it wasn't just caring about their loved icon. It is because that is really what the Oromo was deeply wounded. That had far-reaching consequences for the country. Once the polarization blew up, I strongly believe, had Hachalu not been killed and we didn't go to jail, Abiy and TPLF would not have been emboldened to go to war. I think TPLF got emboldened because they saw Abiy being squeezed at his home front, and the right side of the politics also emboldened because they saw Abiy is now totally dependent on them. So I think that is an important episode in long history of Ethiopia.
It might be one important milestone, but I think analyzing the moves that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed did since he came to power, starting from the rapprochement with Eritrea and what has transpired after that, I think that those a combination of those steps that he was taking, including the rapprochement itself, makes it inevitable that the war in Tigray was a matter of when, not if. But I agree with you that as an immediate cause has contributed to the outbreak of the war itself, and alliances have shifted. The Prime Minister was now clearly allied with the reactionary forces there, who have actually thanked him for the crackdown in Oromia, for arresting you, and the popular protest in support of your arrest is like Hachalu is killed now. Next is Jawar. We've heard those young people singing those, and so by the time that crackdown happened, not just against you and the political leadership of the OLF, let's not forget that, but also the youth in Oromia, more than 10,000 Keros were and Kares were detained soon after that. So that crackdown has clearly defined alliance formation in the political sphere there. The Prime Minister moved completely, totally to the right, and then that has given an impetus and a speed to the outbreak of the war. This is my analysis of it. But I would not discount the fact that it has given force to or even speed the process up into the outbreak of the war. That being said, who killed Hachalu? Yeah, well, let me be the 6-year-old today and let me ask you, who killed Hachalu? His wife is asking for justice year after year after year. How is it that such an iconic figure, and I'm asking you this as somebody influential who knows the politics and and the actors in it, how is it that 4 years and a half down the line we still don't know?
I don't have a conclusive answer for that, because I like to have a solid proof. This is such an important person, such an important moment in our country's history. I don't want to speculate. I didn't have enough time. I was arrested the next day while in prison. Those who were accused, there was a lot of activities. I was able to gather a lot of information from police who were investigating, from those who were interrogated. I have an idea of what happened, who did it. I have an idea, but I don't have conclusive evidence to pinpoint. What I can tell you is, during those few days, there was active effort by the authorities to cover up the investigation. There were police investigators who were jailed with us. And there was intensive effort to blame it on. Before Ajalu's body was taken from the scene where his body was found to the hospital, authorities were calling me, telling me who killed it. So there was an effort to assign responsibility. There was an effort to interfere with the proper investigation, with the police work. I don't know, was that state sponsored? Was it the whole government? Was it individual officials? It requires proper investigation. I think what's needed, it's not only him. There are so many killings that happened in the last 6 years. Assassinations.
Coming close to.
No, we have to go back. We have to go back to the killing in Amhara region.
Of the state officials.
The state officials and also the general.
This is by all means.
And both sides whom I knew, and whom kind of knew something was about to happen, but nothing was done about it. There are a segment of the Amhara population who still believe someone who didn't do it, and there is a segment who believe he did it. The reason for that is not well known, because independent, proper, documented investigation was not carried out. Then we have the killing of the same night, the killing of the chief of armed forces, in a very strange way. No proper investigation was done. Then there is a Ajalu's assassination. There is.
Are we looking at the same scenario with the assassination of Bate Orgesa?
Exactly,
I was reading
exactly.
Your
I think the
that.
What the government's refusal to allow independent fact finding on these killings has deepened the culture of impunity. The Ethiopian state has always killed people, but it used to kill them as a state. It will come up with a draconian law during Red Terror. Remember, there is just and there is a reason. You might not accept the reasons. You might not accept the judicial process, but the state, Leviathan was acting. Yeah. But now it's like the state has gone rogue, and that is killing, which is documented. And I don't want to say who did it and how. I know for a fact what happened there, because they kidnapped him in full view of the people, and they shot him. They didn't know that there are guards standing and seeing them. But the impunity, the killing of the Karayua Bagadas, where they lined them up. It's not a killing. They lined them up, and they did conference call.
And yet the Reuters investigation has revealed quite a lot of details on the execution of the 14.
There is something that report didn't do. The conference call, which was recorded and presented to the Prime Minister, who gathered the remaining surviving Karayu elders and distributed them weapons instead of distributing justice. This has emboldened those who want to use state as a cover to undertake what, you know, what mafias do. And yeah.
I want us to finish the book, the conversation on the book. I don't want to preempt this conversation with a question. You wrote a part about the Tigray war. Then the book goes into the conclusion part. What most of it happened while you were in prison, and at one point you commented that it was a good thing you were in prison, because otherwise the madness that was outside of the prison, would have pulled you left and right. And I asked myself at that time, there is no madness when it comes to right and wrong. What is the right and wrong of that war for you?
There was neither side is absolutely right, neither side is absolutely wrong, because this war, the prelude to it, is something I know intimately, detailed, and it was no surprise to me that it is heading toward the war. What I was earlier alluding to, always, had we not gone to war, had we not gone to jail, and the killing of Jalu did not create chaos in Oromia, I think we had a shot at just a month before we went to jail, a month or two. I flew to Europe to meet with a prominent Tigrayan leader, and there was so much effort that was done to bridge this gap, but there was also so much madness on both sides. You know what the irony? While they were prepared, while they were waging wars towards eventual war, neither side were actually prepared. For example, the Tigrayan side, that's what makes this whole conflict weird. The Tigrayan side, they had very small number of soldiers, but the way they were talking in media is as if they were armed with nuclear. The federal government, the federal government side,
group that published, they have like 250,000.
It is not misleading, but they were telling me. If it was misleading, it was the TPLF, the Tigrayan leadership was doing that. But it's not only them. On the side of the federal government, where they were boasting, where they were flexing muscles as if they were ready for war. But I spoke to a general after I came out of prison, a general who was at the front lines. He told me after 2 or 3 days of the war, and they've had no ammunition. That's what makes it extremely, there is like deep down, as if like they didn't want it. I think they thought that they can intimidate each other into standing down. That part is what made, and on to what you said, not being part of there. You see, as I grow older, I've become statist. I desperately want to preserve the Ethiopian state. And in prison, where I immersed myself into reading, and I've become so statist that there is part of it's evolving. It started early. So I clearly saw the TPLF march could finish the state. One. I was also on the side of the people. I wanted the Tigray autonomy to be respected. I want them to be reintegrated back. So I was in fundamental opposition to Abiy's effort to crush them down and make them submit, dissolve their autonomy. So if I wasn't in prison, I would have been forced, It's like, I say this to give credence to people like you and others who took sides, this side or that side, because I don't want to be judgmental. Because I wasn't there. If I was in the field, this war, what is so painful and ugly about that war is not the killing. War, you die. At least from me, who was subjected to sit and watch it on TV, listen it on radio. The words I saw, friends, progressive friends, liberal friends, people who used to advise me to moderate my tone, turn into monsters. And that was really, really scary. And I was glad. I was glad I wasn't there, because confronting monsters could turn you into a monster.
Well, we can't always, I mean, I think history has to begin to reckon with how the political elite conducted themselves both before and after the war. I don't think history will be mistaken in judging how the war was conducted and the amount of violence that was meted out on civilians. We're talking about the amount of rape that women sustained, and hundreds of them, and hundreds and thousands of them. And I think in that regard, there is no right and wrong. To me, at least, there is no right and wrong in the conduct of that war. We could always, of course, go back and interrogate how the politicians have, the run up to the war, and also now what we are seeing. But that's not really the topic of this conversation.
But one thing is very important. Yeah. There is well, I totally agree. The atrocities was created in Tigray was horrendous. Yeah. But the atrocity conducted in Amhara, when Tigray and in Afar. Mm-hmm. Because woman is woman, whether she's raped in Tigray or in Amhara. Yeah. A household is a household, whether it's destroyed in Tigray or in Amhara. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that the degree could be different. The degree could be different. The forces, of course, I hold the state at much higher standard of responsibility than rebels in terms of conduct. The state have to act as a state. The state did not act as a state. So yes, there is a degree difference. I just wanted to say it's very important that I'm not saying both sides. I'm not saying we should attribute equally, but I think there was a point to be made there.
The conclusion of your book is a topic that needs to be discussed in the contemporary aspect of it. What I did so far is to discuss your memories in your memoir that you called "I Don't Regret." Maybe as a way out, we will discuss why you called the title of the book "I Don't Regret." I often hear you, including an interview yesterday with the BBC, calling on a comprehensive peace agreement. Now, we're coming from discussing the Tigray issue, and I'm losing meaning in that. What is comprehensive peace agreement in the Ethiopian context today, where you see the state feeling much emboldened for consolidating power at the center, and a government that doesn't really care about the loss of control in the periphery, just 30 kilometers maybe outside of the capital. And you see insurgent groups asserting themselves and more. What is the appetite of what does comprehensive peace agreement look like? Because both seem to have found their own comfort zone in sustaining the current status quo. Where do we begin when we talk about comprehensive peace agreement?
The starting point should be by appreciating how almost everything has changed in the country. The state has changed, the nature of the way state power is conducted has changed, the way insurgency is conducted is changed from what we knew. The state, Abiy has more absolute power than the Haile Selassie who was appointed by God, who was by law, it's a monarch with unquestionable power, right? But Haile Selassie did not have that kind of monopoly over the state. That's one part. But this state has shrunk into itself. I don't know if it was Charles Tilly or one of the scholars say about state power. State power is measured by its ability to broadcast influence. How much of the territory it controls. Control means how much of the population and territory it is able to tax. How much of that territory it controls over means of violence. How much of it is under its control. That is the capacity of the state. That is state power. Now that has shrunk. Recently I have started calling the Amharic regime president, the Oromo regime president, Adanich and Abiy co-mayors of Addis Ababa. They all live there, and they all just decorate the city. Outside the city, their control is very limited. They, from one district to another district, they don't drive, they have to fly because, so the control of the state has so shrunk. The state capacity, the broadcasting ability of the state has shrunk, but the control of, that power has become, exponentially big. It is into one man. So we have a very weak state, whose capabilities, whose muscles are so weak, but hard-headed. Insurgencies. Back in the day, insurgencies, the EPLF, TPLF, OLF, they started from a small nucleus, 5, 10, 15 people, usually at the university campus, get radicalized. They go create the nucleus, then expand, so it's one vanguard that emerges. What we have, not only in Ethiopia, but in Syria, Libya, elsewhere, is a popular protest, a popular uprising descends into insurgency, where self-creating groups, just young men go to the bush, take weapons. They don't fragment, they start from there. Actually, fragmentation means they were one, they split. No, these insurgents, they are autonomous, self-financed, self-reliant. What they have with the name of, with the other insurgencies, they share common name, they share some common narrative. Besides that, the center does not really provide them much of the resources. They mobilize for themselves. They don't really have politics. There is no political organization. There is nothing like, there is no ideology, but they are localized. This is misleading to the state. The state is now misleading to things. That concentration of power makes it as if they are powerful. They are not. It's a concentrated but limited power on some part of the state. It also misleads them in assessing the insurgents, because the insurgents don't have one unifying leader or Politburo. Yes, they're
not seen as a direct threat to the
power
of the center.
Yeah, okay, they don't immediately threaten the capital city because they don't project themselves as a viable alternative. But because they are localized and autonomous, they are highly mobile. They can embed themselves. They are well accustomed to the terrain. They know their society. They are extremely effective as insurgents. And traditional armies like NDF are not accustomed to fighting this kind of war. That's why the army is now drained. NDF, whenever they confront, the NDF beat these rebels. But the rebels have figured out they don't confront them. So what's the impact of this? It's like it's eating the state from every angle. There is an animal called kiya, I don't know what's it called. It's a wild dog, I think. Like one wild dog will not bring down an elephant. Yeah? Elephant is big. But what do they do? Many of them just jump on it from different directions. They keep biting, running, right? It might take them 24 hours. But they cut down the muscles and they wear down the big, powerful animal. And finally, either they bring it down or a wind or another bigger animal comes and topple it. So that's what we saw in Syria. Because this kind of insurgencies, what they do is they obstruct economic activities, they obstruct security. So domestic trade, domestic agriculture, foreign investment dries up eventually. And they wear down the army. Eventually the state's capacity gets so consumed that it could not withstand any other any other change of direction of the wind like we saw in Syria.
What does comprehensive peace means then in this dynamic, in this changing dynamic?
When I got out of prison, I gave interview, and in that interview I said there was no Fano has not rebelled on the government. They were disappointed with reproach with Tigray, and the government was talking about disarming after distributing them 100,000 AKs. They want to collect weapons. I said I wouldn't prioritize physical collection of the weapons. I would prioritize on disarming the mind. What pushes people to the jungle to pick up a gun? It is sense of alienation. It is a sense of victimization. It is desperation. It is disillusionment with the political establishment. in Ethiopia, it is the tightening of the political sphere, the elimination, sidelining of the established political elite, the moderate, seasoned political leadership that the youth looked at, and whether they're from Gimbi or Hararge or Gondar or Gojam, the kids, even in that non-democratic system, they always thought so and so speaks for us, so and so can influence, we can influence that guy, so we can influence the decision making at the center. All of a sudden, any notable figure was eliminated from the political scene. And when they saw, and these are young people who believed and actually did carry the current government in their shoulder to the throne, they expected to be rewarded with jobs and democracy and security. Now, no democracy, no jobs, and in their kabbales they get beaten, harassed, killed by the local militia. So, and they don't have anybody to appeal to, they don't have anybody to speak for them. That is what pushed these young people to the jungle. So, the first thing to do is to disarm the mind. The first thing to do is to stabilize the political discourse at the center. People talk about this TPLF division, shameful, sad, yes, but it cannot detach what's happening in Mekelle from what's happening in Addis. It is a lack of a strategic leadership, a lack of a leadership with countrywide view. Mengistu was brutal, but he saw himself as a protector of the state, and he projected himself as such. Whether they loved him, they hated him, he cared about what village people did. So did Mallas, and so did Haile Selassie. And when two clans fight, they saw that as a threat to the state and threat to their authorities. Also intervened. What we have right now is when two political parties, two rebels fight, we have a leadership at the center who cherishes it. They see it as part of strengthening their power. But what that was doing was fragmenting the society, fragmenting the population. So the first thing we have to do is realize that this situation needs to change, that we need to open up the political space slowly, not all of a sudden, make everyone feel this is a shared country. It doesn't belong to one man, it doesn't belong to any faction, it belongs to everybody. Bring back, before you bring back the insurgents, the radicalized, bring back the normal politicians, have a conversation with them, stop talking down to them. They are shareholders of the country, let them have their opinion, have conversation. You see, the problem is from where Abiy comes, the way he views power. There's two views of power. Last time I wrote on the standard. One view is bottom up, that you start from the bottom, you mobilize people, you organize, you earn your way up to the leadership, and you owe your power to your support structure, your constituency. There is another inverse view of power, which is power is top down. You are anointed by God, right? You are literally, Abiy sees himself as the God Almighty's representative in Ethiopia, right? Once, it's not only him, there is that ideology comes from that side. Once you see himself as anointed by God, you are appointed there, you don't share power, you give power. Pay attention to the letter when he appoints people. That letter is very telling. These two-line letters. He gives power, right? He gives power. One of the issues with OLA, one of the silly issues was he didn't mind giving them power as much as the mediator said that in Oromo. But he didn't want power sharing. Share, you don't share, because how do you share what God gave you? What God gave you, you donate.
But isn't that an elected party? Don't they say elections have consequences? We have election in 2021, and I think one of the regions that largely went out for the election and gave the mandate to the ruling party is the Amhara regional state, which is at war now with the federal government. And that's the argument. I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here now. We are elected, right? So we have a mandate. The Ethiopian people have given us a mandate. This is what the government say. So what power share could possibly be done there to stabilize the country?
See, elections have become, back in the day, authoritarian rulers used to resist election. Now, they have found them a very useful tool of renewing their legitimacy and clinging to legitimacy. In Ethiopia, there has never been a real election, never. And the last one was worse than all of them because it actually did not take place in a lot of places. So I don't want to go into really silly debates when we come to this election sides. But power sharing, you cannot go away from power sharing in multinational, polarized, plural society. Power has to be negotiated. Whether the elites come to the front through election or through other means, the pie has to be negotiated. The slice of pie each side in the constituency has to be negotiated. That's the only way you can actually stabilize a multinational state, a plural society. You cannot do it without that. The first step is, of course, to agree on the rule of the game, but after that, it has to be constantly negotiated. Kenya is a good example of it, and pretty much every democracy, even the established democracy, is a constant negotiation of alliance building, power sharing. Power sharing is part because a country is a shared company. Every citizen has a stake in it. Every segment of society has a stake in it, or a claim to the stake in it. In that situation, you cannot tell them, everything is mine, I will donate to you. If you have a share in a bank, the bank has to give you dividend every year, right? It has to share the dividend of the profit. Can the CEO say, I donate whatever I wish to this one, to this one, to this one, or he has to negotiate and proportionally distribute, right? That's the way we have to see a plural society. The view that one man or one party during PRF and one man now, takes all of it and gives to whoever he wants and sidelines anybody, even if they have bigger share, is not sustainable, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Election is coming up. Do you see the election happening in Ethiopia now in a year and a half of time, given the trajectory where the country is currently? The last election, I was mentioning it for the sake of argument, is that I'm very much aware that there are quite significant areas do not even vote until 2 years down the line, or due to conflicts and due to other logistics, inaccessibility logistics. We just like that we're approaching another election now, and where do you see that? Is it going to happen, and B, if it happens, what are the scenarios that we're looking into?
You remember, I was the big election guy, and that was my conversation used to be with Abiy and others. Now I no longer think about elections, because talking about election right now is it's just not realistic. I don't know what the law says, but in different countries, one election is considered legitimate if it takes place either 2/3 or 3/4 of constituency. Ethiopia has 547 seats in parliament or constituency. It has to take place on probably more than 400, 450 places. The states, for election to take place, the state has to have control over that amount of territory and population. The current state's effective control is probably less than 1/3. So in that situation, you cannot really have a legitimate election. They wanted to do census. Why do they keep postponing it? Because practically, physically impossible to do it. And next election as well, you can pretend, you can claim it has happened, but to have any semblance of legitimacy, I don't think, and I think it just complicates the problem. It just complicates it. They had election remember when we were begging them, let's use this opportunity of COVID to settle down, and they went to the election, and the Amharic region voted for them, right? That's actually one region where there was some semblance of stability. They voted, or Addis Ababa. Look at what's happening now. The elections are things that come after we reach political settlement. That is, once we agree on rule of the game, how power changes. Basically, what's politics anyway? Politics, at the end of the day, once it's stabilized, is about elites and their constituencies bargaining, competing for a slice of the pie. So, in the current situation, where that is just not there, I think if I was them, I wouldn't waste my money, my resources on election.
So, by way of this is a very interesting conversation we're having. By way of exit, I wanted to bring you back to the book, which you called "I Don't Regret." Is this a signal for your constituency that you are going back to actively engage in politics? This is what I wanted to ask. But second, there is a lot of conversation happening about the title itself. So before we finish, I want to throw that. And some of these conversations circle around the wrongs you did in the past, and I think it comes from the conviction of people, or the expectation that you will need to apologize or repent for those wrongs. For those so fiery preachings that you were doing left and right, and some of those social mobilization posts that you were doing, and a lot of people bring those back and still expect you to regret. Is it a response to that? Is it a response to that, or is this a hint towards what is coming for you ahead? Are you going to be participating in any active politics now?
None of that. It's a conversation with myself. This book covers the 6 years of my existence, not the last 2. I look back and said, from my childhood, what I did, what happened to me, and everything, I looked at it and said, of course there are a lot of mistakes, a lot of silly things that happen in there. The reason I say, it's no regret, like, as I said earlier, there is nothing that I said, oh, I should have done that, because I did everything I thought I should do. One. Second, politics consumed me my entire life, and I studied politics as a science, as a way of living, really, not theoretical politics. As I was taking every class, I was thinking how to apply it. A friend of mine, the Jehovah's, always makes fun of me. He asks me something, and I don't share about future usually what I want to do. Why did you do that? He tells me. I say, I'm testing a theory. He still makes fun of me whenever, even on any social life. I don't tell him. He said, are you still testing theory? So I had a theory, I had an idea. I was introduced to this nonviolent resistance by Professor Johnny Carson at Stanford. I traveled India, Eastern Europe. I wanted to see it. So I labored for it. It actually worked. So was it costly personally? It was costly. It was personally costly, put me in with so many trouble that I didn't even include in the books. Was it worth it? It was worth it. Second, see, from the community I came out from, who were subjected to, repression and exclusion. More than that, what was hurting our people when I was growing up and when I was going, particularly in diaspora, was this sense of impotence, this sense of we can't do it, what I call collapse of collective self-esteem. You go to a bar, you go to birthday place, you go to funeral, you go to wedding, all they say is, oh, Oromos can't do this, oh, Oromos are not united. And you go to other communities, they say, oh, these people are 50 million, but look at them, they've been doing this for the last 50 years. I just wanted to change that. And we did change that. That was something worth living, worth dying for. Why should I regret? Very few people in life dreamt to do something and actually did it, and I'm one of them. Right? So what I'm saying is, any sacrifice I paid, any mistake I made, my heart was on the right path. And finally, I delivered. My efforts paid off. The pain and suffering I went through, I don't write much about it. I don't like to do it. And when I say that, that's the part. The book is really about the past, only the last chapter. As to about the future, yes, I'm back. You know, politics is very strange stuff. Whenever you step out, it just pulls you back. 2018, I thought I was done. You know, my promise was, I force EPRD to change. Then I go back to academia. Because I'm a good student, you know. I'm a theory. I like theory, I like studying, I like writing, I like intellectual debate. I'm a reluctant player. I'm good in real politics. But I'm really not, I'm a reluctant player in it. My home is in academia. My home is in the intellectual world. I want to be a teacher. I used to be a very good teacher. And I think if I go back to university, I would still be a very good teacher. So in 2018, I wanted to step out. But I saw the transition needed me. I was pulled back into it. After prison, there was a moment where I wanted to step down. You know, people make fun of me like my diplomatic years, you know. From 2022 to now, I was actively engaged, but behind the scene. With diplomats, with leaders, providing analysis, providing resources, connecting, networking people. Much of the political developments over the last 2 years, I was involved in them. But I saw there's a limit to that. They took it for granted. They used our goodwill, my effort, to further re-entrench this anocracy that's ripping the country, killing the country. I felt this diplomatic thing, that strange thing I was experimenting with, I remember I was testing theory, is actually making things worse for people. And people come and told me. You know, it's like, and then I said, maybe I should go back to being loud.
Does that explain your recent active engagement, should I say, in your commenting?
I don't do politics without thinking about it. I think, I read, I meditate, I sleep on it, I work on it, and then I put a plan together. In the past I succeeded. I want to try one more time. Because I don't want to regret. I don't regret my life to this now. I don't know how long I have after this. If I become old and couldn't go around and run, I don't want to sit in my house and then, oh, I should have done that. I don't want my next chapter of my life to have any regrets. I want to try it. I might fail. I would be happy even if I fail. But I want to make sure my influence, my knowledge, my experience, my connections, my network, which are much bigger than before. Remember the gray hairs. So I want to use that to force change of course, because the current course is disastrous for everybody.
Jawar Mohamed, thank you very much. I'm extremely happy that we had this opportunity to sit and have this conversation with, and I thank you for our audience. This was one of the, you could talk to Jawar for hours, and I know that we have a limited time sitting here, but I do believe that we have covered many issues. But my aim was to have that conversation about the book that he wrote in Afan Oromo and in Amharic, and we were launching your...
The English will be coming in a couple of months.
Hopefully the English will be coming in a couple of months. But and this was about a conversation about this book, but of course you cannot resist having more conversation with Jawar. So thank you very much. Thank you to our audience as well.